So the next topic is iteration statements in PLSQ. Or iterative statements, PLSQ. Okay. So these are also called as loops. Loops in PLSQ. So every programming language will have the concept of loops. So actually, why for a loop? A loop is nothing but to execute a set of statements or same number of statements for many times. Many times means the many times can be control, can be finite times or infinite times. Suppose I will tell one small example in a company, software company. So at the end of every month they will be preparing pay slips, not in a software company, any company. Okay, for a single employee they can use a small application like calculation of TA, DA, etc. Suppose the same calculation they wanted to calculate for second employee. So they can repeat the application. Suppose 3 employees are there. So 3 times the program can be repeated. 4 times are there. 4 times the program can be repeated. Suppose in a company 100 employees are there, some 1000 employees are there, like 10,000 employees are there. So in such case, they cannot execute same program for many times. Okay, so that means the calculation, salary calculation part must be kept under one concept called loops. Means, so if the same set of statements are kept under a loop, what happens here? The set of statements are executed for more than one time. That means any programming language offers loops. Without loops, no programming language will be existed. Okay. Means if a programming, if you want to execute a same set of statements for many times, several times, we have to make use of loops. Means every loop will be having conditions. Okay. So as far as our PLSQL is concerned, we are going to have 3 types of loops. What are the 3 types of loops? First category is basic loop. Basic loop. When comes to second category, this is while loop. While loop. Third category is for loop. For loop. Okay, so these are the 3 types of loops available in PLSQL. Basic loop, while loop and for loop. So what is the difference between each and every loop, how it is going to repeat, and what are the true conditions and what are the false condition, and what is the loop controlling variable? So I will discuss in detail. First I will take basic loop. Syntax of basic loop I will write over here. The basic loop syntax is very simple. Just you put the statements which are to be executed in the 2 statements called loop and end loop. Loop and end loop. For any loop, the 2 statements are there. Here, body of the loop. Body of the loop is there. This is a simple way. Loop and end loop, body of the loop. Suppose I want to print DURGASOFT for 10 times. Okay. So to print DURGASOFT for 10 times, the mechanism of the loop will be like this. First, initialization of the variable. Okay. Initialization means from which point the loop has to be started. Okay. So my loop variable is suppose n equal to 1. A colon is compulsory, n colon equal to sign. This is mandatory. N colon equal to, and within the loop, what I am going to write? DBMS underscore output dot put underscore line, say DURGASOFT. Now I will make a condition like this: exit when I is greater than 10. So here say I equal to I plus 1. So finally you have to write what? End loop. So this is a mechanism for repeatedly printing DURGASOFT for 10 times. So how it is printed 10 times I will show. First I am initializing n value to 1. N value to 1 and automatically without checking any condition the flow of control will enter into loop environment. Here what happens, first time DURGASOFT is printed. DURGASOFT is printed. So after printing DURGASOFT, what happens here? It is going to check this condition. It is going to check this condition. So what is the current value of n here? The current value of n is 1. Now it is going to check whether 1 is greater than 10. That means this is for coming out. This is not for execution. In case of for loop and while loop, we are going to specify when the loop has to be executed, in which case. That means whenever condition is true, then only the body of the loop is executed. But in this case what happens here, this is a condition for termination, exiting from the loop. Okay. So as this condition is false, 1 is greater than 10. So 1 is greater than 10 means this condition is false. When condition is false, exiting is not occurred. Execution of the body of the loop is occurred. Execution of the body of the loop is occurred. So what happens here? I is equal to, sorry, this is not I, this is n value, n. So previous value of n is what? 1. So here what happens here, n equal to n plus 1 means 1 plus 1, here 2 will be there in the n. So again directly control comes to this part. Means this is executed for 10 times, DBMS statement and exit n equal to n plus 1. So again it is going to print, first time it has printed DURGASOFT. Second time when I value, this is I equal to 1, when I value equal to 1. Second time also after n becoming 2, it will print what? DURGASOFT. This is when n value equal to 2. Like this, what happens here? At one time n value becomes 3. N value becomes 3. Sorry, n value becomes 10. N value becomes 10. And whenever n value becomes 10, here the DBMS statement DURGASOFT is printed. So after printing this number, it is going to check whether n is greater than 10. N is greater than 10, is it true or false? False again. Okay. What happens? N equal to n plus 1. Now n value becomes how much? 11. When n value equal to 11, what happens? The message is printed. And after that, what happens here? 11 is greater than 10. So 11 is greater than 10 means condition is true here. So when condition is true, automatically control comes out of from loop. Okay, control comes out of from loop. So like this, you can you can print this message. So when n value equal to 1, it is printed, 2 is printed, 3 is printed. And whenever when n value equal 10, for 10 also it is going to be printed. And whenever n value becomes 10, 11, for 11 also one time it is printed. For 11 also one time it is printed. So after that it is going to check the condition. So when condition is true, what happens here? n equal to n plus 1 will not be executed. When n value equal to I value equal to n value equal to 11. Like this we can make use of this basic loop for printing DURGASOFT message for number of times. Exit when n is greater than 10. That means explicitly we have to check. So explicitly we have give exit condition. But in case of while loop and for loop, we are going to specify condition for true. Whenever the condition is true there, the body of the loop is executed. Here whenever the condition is true, loop is exited. This is for exiting and that is for execution. Don't get confused. So there is a lot of difference between this mechanism and while loop and true while loop and for loop mechanism. In basic loop, we are going to write a condition for exiting, for closing the loop. But in case of while loop and for loop, just we are going to write a condition for execution of body of the loop. That is the difference, main difference. Exit when n is greater than 10. Just you look at the statement, have a look just and you try to understand very clearly. Exit. When we have to exit? When n value becomes n value greater than 10, we have to quit. Okay, quitting is done when n value equal to 10, when n is greater than 10. And whenever n greater than 10, when n is greater than 10, what happens automatically? The loop will be exited and control comes out of from the end loop statement. So if any statement is there here and that statement will be executed and directly control comes over to this line. This will be executed. So this is a mechanism of what? Basic loop. So in the basic loop, any loop, for loop or while loop, we have to take one variable that is called as n equal to 1. So this is called as loop controlling variable and it is also called as counter variable. Okay. Using this we are going to control the activity of a loop. So here one more thing I have to explain. How many times this n equal to 1 is executed? Only for one time. Only for one time any value is executed. And how many times this DBMS output dot put line will be executed? This is for executed. This is to be executed. How many times? More than one time, means 10 times. Now exit when n is greater than 10. That means this becomes what? Body of the loop. The body of the loop will be executed for more than one time, and the installation part is executed for more than one time. No, installation part is executed for only one time. Only one time, not more than one time. It is executed only one time before execution of body of the loop. Okay. So this is regarding initialization, body of the loop and termination. Exit when n is greater than 10. Whenever n becomes more than 10, automatically exiting process will be executed. The control comes out from the loop and it executes the next statement immediately followed by end loop. Suppose here I may write one statement like something like DBMS output dot put line, something like end loop. This is printed. Here after this I may write end statements. When exit is encountered, automatically loop comes, flow of execution comes out and it executes the next statement immediately followed by end loop statements. So this will be executed. This is the controlling mechanism of body of the loop, basic loop. Next I will explain while loop. Mechanism of while loop will be like this again. Same variable I will take here, n equal to 1. This is initialization, this is executed only once. And the mechanism of while loop, this is like this. While n is less than or equal to 10. N is less than or equal to 10. And within loop, just you write, you can write loop. And this is body of the loop. So body of the loop, suppose again I am writing DBMS output dot put underscore line, same message I am printing, DURGASOFT. And here also you have to increment n value by 1, n equal to n plus 1, and finally you have to write what? End loop. Okay. Condition is previously in the basic loop what I did here, that is for exit condition. Exit when n is greater than 10. Here this is a condition for execution of the body of the loop. And as long as the condition is true, the body of the loop is executed, and whenever a condition is false, what happens here? Loop will be terminated. Here, how many times this is executed? This is executed for how many times? One time. Condition will be checking for how many times? 1 is less than or equal to 10. 2 is less than or equal to 10. 10 is less than or equal to 10. 11 is less than or equal to 10. This is occurred. How many times here? Condition execution is executed for more than one time. Here, DURGASOFT is printed for 10 times. N equal to n plus 1. Every time the n value is incremented. Suppose I may omit this line, n equal to n plus 1. So whenever you omit this n equal to n plus 1 statement, what happens here? Never condition is false. Automatically the loop will be entering into infinite state. That means execution of the body of the loop is important. Along with that, specifying a condition for termination of the loop, that is also most important. Okay, execution is compulsory, and execution of the specifying condition for exiting of the body of the loop is also mandatory. Okay, every time we have to specify like this mechanism. So this is while loop, and for loop syntax will be like this. I will explain that also with a complete example. Syntax of for loop. First I will write syntax. For variable in two dots, variable or range 1, variable in range 1 to range 2, range 2, write loop statement either here or here, anywhere you can write loop, the body of the loop, body of the loop, and say end loop, end loop. For example, for variable n in 1 to 10, 1 to 10, so your n becomes variable, 1 becomes range 1, we have to give 2 dots only, and 10, range 2. Now within the loop, just you print a message. What is the message? dbms underscore output dot score line DURGASOFT. DURGASOFT. And finally you write end loop. So when compared to basic loop and while loop, there is a advantage in for loop. So what is the advantage here? First advantage is you need not to increment n variable, counter variable, loop controlling variable. Automatically that is n is incremented. And in case of while loop, every time you have to increment n equal to n plus 1 you have to say. Okay, so unless you say n equal to n plus 1, n value will not be incremented. But in case of for loop, automatically n value is incremented. Here we have got for loop, basic loop, while loop and for loop. So which loop is suitable in which case? So just within a line I will explain. So when the body of the loop has to be executed for finite time is known times, you go for loop. That means in advance we may or may not be knowing how many times the body of the loop has to be executed. So in such case, then that means if you know when the body of the loop has to be executed for known times, you better use for loop. So when you don't know the number of times of the body of the loop execution, use while loop. Okay, once again I will repeat. When you don't know the number of iterations, the number of cycles, number of executions, use while loop. When you don't know, use while loop. When you know the number of iterations, the number of cycles, use for loop. Okay, so that is the difference between while loop and while loop. While depending upon requirement, you may use either for loop or while loop. Any loop you can use. And basic loop is as per the requirement. So in basic loop we are going to write exit condition whenever the condition is false, the body of the loop is executed. That means in the body of the loop, in the basic loop, just we are going to write condition for exiting, closing. Here the condition for execution of the body of the loop, completely reverse. So don't get confused between basic loop, while loop and for loop. Always in the while loop, for loop, condition must be true for execution of the body of the loop. But in case of basic loop, always the condition must be false, because we are going to write condition for exiting, closing, not for execution. So be careful while using basic loop, for loop and while loop. Why use while loop? When you don't know number of iterations. Use for loop when you know number of iterations in advance. Okay, so these are the basic differences and syntaxes and examples of loops in SQL. Okay.